Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, D&J Reads. I'm Danielle, and today I'm going to be talking about Omegaverses. So if you're unaware of what an Omegaverse is, this is definitely the video for you, so please stick around. I am going to be going in depth and explaining everything about Omegaverses, and then I will have some recommendations at the end of the video. So I had never heard of this term before, and I kind of stumbled on my first Omegaverse. I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, I absolutely love this. I need to find more of this. What is it? I just need to know more about this. So I did some research and I want to bring all of that research to you. So I've been reading Omegaverses for about 2 to 3 years now. I absolutely love them and I hope to turn more people onto them because it is one of my favorite subgenres and I hope to introduce more people to it. An Omegaverse, which can also be known as ABO or OV for short, is just an alternate universe where humans have specific designations based on their biology, and those designations can be alpha, beta, or omega. Each of those designations comes with specific traits to your physiology and personality. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is going to be alphas. Alphas are physically bigger and more muscular, tend to be more aggressive, and are generally the more dominant designation. They are natural-born leaders who hold positions of authority and have fierce urges to protect and care for their loved ones. Most alphas form packs with other alphas in order to increase their wealth and dominance and entice an omega to come and be with them. Once the alphas have grouped into a pack and they are able to find their omega, they end up biting them. This is called a claiming bite. Depending on the author that you get, a lot of them bite on the neck area. Sometimes you'll find it other places, on the hand, down lower, kind of just anywhere. But generally it's in the neck area where all the pheromones are. This bite, though, forms a link between the alpha and the omega, and they can essentially feel each other's feelings, wants, needs. If one is thinking of something and becomes anxious, the alpha can tell that the omega is anxious just between that bond that they have together. Generally, the claiming bite is just between alphas and omegas or alphas and betas. Sometimes everybody has a bite, sometimes only 1 or 2 people have a bite. It really depends on how the author is feeling. Unfortunately, in a lot of Omegaverses, one of the themes is alphas taking advantage of the omegas and essentially abusing their power. So do know that going into a lot of them, that is an underlying theme. So I'll talk about that a little bit more when I get to the omega section, but back onto alphas. So alphas give off unique pheromones, which is their scent or perfume. This actually entices an omega to come to them. Sometimes they smell good, sometimes they smell bad. I know in books I've had them smell of cinnamon and breakfast things, and in some of them they smell like oil and just something gross. So this will either entice the omega to come to them or kind of turn them off. A lot of the time, if they have bad smells, they tend not to be the greatest of alphas and you don't want to be around them anyway. Now onto the good stuff. So, alphas who are assigned male at birth have a fleshy ring around the base of their penis that during intercourse swells and locks them into the omega for the best chance of procreation. Fertility is a common issue in a lot of these Omegaverses, so the fact that the alpha has their knot and that they produce a large amount of cum is definitely helpful in these situations. Speaking of, alpha's cum is highly nutritious to omegas because that is essentially all the sustenance they are getting during their heats. And I will talk about heats a little bit more when I get to the omega section. Alphas who are exposed to an omega in heat can essentially go into a rut where they become frenzied and combative and aren't able to think about anything else but sex until they are able to have their omega. Again, this is all about biological imperative, so think about how wolves and dogs end up having sex. It's kind of essentially the same idea there. On the other hand, female assigned at birth alphas have a lock at the entrance to their vagina, which essentially swells and locks the penis into place while they are orgasming. This gives them a higher chance of getting pregnant as well. Female alphas are not super common in Omegaverses, but I have loved the ones that I've found with them. Some other alpha traits are that they can purr to soothe distressed omegas, they can growl when something is going on that they don't like, and they can bark, which is essentially issuing a command that is just very loud and quick, and the omegas have to follow that. They have the need. They can't deny their alpha when they hear that. While omegas are the most biologically compatible to take an alpha's knot, betas and even alphas themselves can learn with practice to take a knot. So next up is betas, and this section is not going to be very long because the beta designation is the closest designation that you get to an everyday human. They tend to be the most level-headed designation, and their scent and sense of smell is not nearly as strong as an alpha's and omega's is. They don't experience heats or ruts like omegas and alphas do, and they don't have a knot or a lock either. Betas tend to be the most overlooked designation, and if they are included in a pack, they tend to be the ones during the heats that are going and grabbing the food for everybody, taking care of the alphas, taking care of the omegas. Sometimes they are included depending on the author, and sometimes they are not. But that's really it for betas. They don't really have any other distinguishing factors. I actually really like the books where betas are included and where the beta is the main character in the book. I always find those to be really fun. But next up, the part that I know everybody is waiting for, all about the omegas. Omegas tend to be the most gentle and softest designation and tend toward a submissive dynamic, as well as they are slenderer in stature. Generally, they don't hold positions of power and tend to stay at home and be homemakers, but this is not the case in every situation. Also, just like alphas have a bark, omegas have a whine. When omegas whine in an alpha's presence, an alpha has an uncontrollable urge to fix whatever is bothering that omega. Omegas produce their own scent or perfume, as sometimes it is called, that entices others towards them. Their scent or perfume is more prominent when they are excited or turned on. Their scent can also be more prevalent when their heat is near. So instead of menstruating, omegas go into heat, which is when they are most fertile and pretty much want sex all of the time. Heats can last from a few days to a week or longer, and similar to a period, can happen monthly or a couple times a year. It really just depends on what the author wants to do in their world. During this time, they will produce a slick, which is essentially just them getting very, very wet down there in order to avoid chafing from this week-long sex marathon. And during this time, they are extremely sensitive to light and noise and just like to be surrounded by a nest of soft fabrics and the smells of their packs. The nest is the place where they will spend their whole heat, and also in a lot of books, it is where they will birth the babies and essentially raise them in the beginning. Omegas like to have their nests smelling of their packs, like I said before, so sometimes they will go steal clothes from the pack or just have them come and lay around with them to bring that scent in and make that a safe place for them. They need their nest to be a safe place because while they're in heat, all they can really think about is having sex, getting bitten by an alpha, and they kind of lose their sense of self, so they need it to be a safe place in order to feel protected, but still be able to go through this. So while they're in heat, omegas become obsessed with finding an alpha to bite and knot and breed them. So this biting is actually equivalent to a human marriage, essentially, and is not easily undone in this world, seeing as there's a physical bond that comes along with it. But one of the problems is the delirium and increased libido that they have. If they find any alpha off the street, they are going to want that alpha to do that to them. And that is not necessarily a safe thing for the omegas. So omegas really need to be in a safe place during their heat, or bad things can happen and they can become attached to alphas that they do not want to be attached to. Going through a heat as an unbonded omega can actually be detrimental to their health, so it is best if they can find alphas that they trust beforehand so that this does not become a problem. So once an omega has found their alpha or alphas, those alphas will do everything in their power to take care of and make that omega comfortable during their heat and afterwards. Another thing is omegas tend to be more fertile than betas and alphas in these books, and they tend to have multiple pregnancies all at one time. And when they do have those babies are sometimes called pups. So I've mostly been talking about female omegas, but males can be omegas as well. In this case, some males do have a self-lubricating anus, which allows them to take the alphas not a little bit easier than they normally would be able to. And in some of these male omega-centric OVs, there is something that is called mpreg that comes into play, and mpreg is male pregnancy. In these type of OVs, males either tend to give birth through C-section, delivering anally, or through a second hole that they have. This varies depending on the author and their preferences. So I know I talked about perfumes and scents a little bit earlier, but I'm just going to kind of expand on that because that is a really big theme in Omegaverses. And alphas and omegas are essentially looking for their fated mate or scent match instead of dating around. This sometimes occurs naturally where they find them out on the street, or most of the time there is a service specifically for the omegas where they can go and they can smell different either cards or smell the alphas themselves. And when they find a scent that they really like and that calls to them, they are then matched with that group or pack. So once they find someone they like, alphas and omegas will essentially scent mark, which is claiming their territory pretty much. They will deposit their pheromones all over their partner, so that will deter others from going after them. This happens by rubbing up on the other person, essentially. They will take their chin and face or anything really where there is a scent gland and rub up on it and deposit that scent onto the other person so that other alphas or omegas can smell that when they get close and are hopefully deterred from going after them. I've always been really interested in the scenting part of this, and I love meeting new characters and finding out what scents they have. I know I said earlier that this is mostly a human alternate universe, but sometimes there are shifters. I've seen werewolf shifters, bear shifters, there's elves, there's orcs, there can even be aliens. I've read one of those and really enjoyed it. So most of the time it is human though, just know that. So one thing I don't think I touched on earlier was the fact that a lot of these romances are either poly or reverse harem. Omegas need a lot of help when they're in heat, so it makes sense to have the pack where there is a bunch of alphas to help out. In these packs though, there are different dynamics. Alphas can be with alphas, alphas can just be with the omega, alphas can be with an omega and a beta, but most of the time they do become poly romances, so just know that going in. If that's not your thing, that's okay. You can find them where it is just reverse harem. There are even some Omegaverses that are just male-female. You just kind of have to look and figure out which one's going to be to your liking. So that was everything. I really tried to touch on all of the big points that are in Omegaverse. I hope it made sense to you. I think once you start reading, you'll really get a sense of it. It is not hard to get into, and this should be a pretty good overview for you. So now I'm just going to go into some of my favorites and recommendations that I think you should read if you're kind of just starting out in Omegaverse, or even if you're a seasoned Omegaverse reader and you just haven't read these yet. So the first series that I want to talk about is actually going to be called the Sweetverse, and it is written by Kathryn Moon and Lana Kole. They switch off and on for who writes each book in the series, but the first couple are from Kathryn Moon. So I love Kathryn Moon. She's actually the reason why I found Omegaverse in the first place. I was reading one of her monster romances and I really wanted to read more from her. So I found Baby and the Late Night Howlers and Lola and the Millionaires, which are the two that I'm actually going to talk to you about now. So Baby and the Late Night Howlers, this is a special edition from the Eternal Embers book box, and this is Lola and the Millionaires. There is a part 1 and part 2, and this I got from the Fated Romance box. So first up, I'll talk about Baby and the Late Night Howlers. This is the first book in the Sweetverse, and I think it's a really good introduction to it. I actually read Lola and the Millionaires first, but Baby is a pretty good introduction as well. So this follows Baby, who has lived her whole life as a beta. She's at a bar with her friend Lola, who's in the next books, and they are at this biker bar. Baby actually perfumes at the biker bar and finds out that she is a late blooming Omega. So this is really unsafe for her to be at this bar because, like I said, alphas who smell Omegas can kind of go into a rut and be a little bit dangerous. So Baby actually needs to find a pack now since she has come out as an Omega. She goes to a matching service and isn't liking any of the scents that she's given. So she actually digs really, really deep into the dredges of this smell catalog until she finds somebody that she really likes. This is actually a biker pack. They've been passed over so many times before because they live in the bar and it's not the best place for an Omega. But Baby really, really wants to meet them, so she is going to. So Baby doesn't care that they're not overly wealthy, she just wants to get to know them. But I feel like this is a good book to learn about Omegaverse, essentially because Baby is learning herself. So you kind of learn with her what it means to be an Omega. So this is a really good starting point. And then a good next place to go would be Lola and the Millionaires, Part 1 and Part 2. So this follows Lola. She's had a little bit of trauma from the first book. So that's why I think you should probably read the first book first. I read Lola first and was a little bit confused, went back and read Baby, and then kind of understood what was going on. So definitely read Baby first. But Lola is a beta and she is just going back to work. She is actually afraid of alphas and is trying to stay away from them. But she meets a beta and realizes that he has a bonding mark, which freaks her out because she thought she was just dating a beta and wasn't going to get involved with any alphas. But she starts dating him and slowly but surely the pack comes into play. In this, we do have an already established pack of alphas, a beta, and an omega that essentially are taking on another beta. Lola has a ton of self-worth issues, so she does not believe that she is right for this pack, but in the end, we see that they just want her for her. So some of the others in this series are Lyric and the Heartbeats by Lana Kole, Fighting Instincts by Lana Kole, Bad Alpha by Kathryn Moon, All Packed Up by Lana Kole. We have Faith and the Dead End Devils by Kathryn Moon, and then we have Not That Serious by Lana Kole as well. So I lost the footage for my next recommendation, so I'm just going to film it over again for you. So I want to talk about the Heat Haven series by Sarah Blue. These are the Faded Romance copies, and I absolutely love them. This is books 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4. You can see they clearly get a little bit longer as you go. Book 1 is a novella length book. I think it's only like maybe 150 pages or so, and that is a really, really great place to start. So the books in this series include Heat Haven, Omega's Obsession, Protector's Promise, Too Tempting, and then there is a holiday short story collection called Heat Haven Holidays. So right on the back of the book here, there's a quote that actually sums it up really well. It says, "Welcome to Heat Haven, a facility where Omegas can safely go through their heat alongside pre-screened and carefully selected alphas." I think that just does the series justice. It pretty much is exactly that. So Omegas can go to this heat clinic where alphas are pre-screened and they are able to set them up together with their preferences and are able to help the Omegas go through their heats. Because in this world, Omegas don't necessarily have to do it alone. They have places that they can go to help them. So the first book, Heat Haven, follows Emily. She is about to have her heat and she is going to Heat Haven to find her room, pick it out, take a look at all of the options that they have. And actually, while she's in the elevator going up, there is another alpha in the elevator with her who is also touring the facility. The elevator breaks down and they have a little fling in the elevator. This kicks things off. Emily wants him to be included in her heat, as well as some of the other guys that she's already picked out. That's pretty much the gist of the first one. Things do get more in-depth as the books get longer in length, but like I said, that first one is just a novella, so it is definitely a great place to start. My favorite in the series is Too Tempting. I absolutely loved that one, and I think I'm going to reread that at some point this year. This series does have an MF pairing, so if you're looking for that, I do believe it's the third one, Protector's Promise. It is just strictly MF. So another one by Sarah Blue that I really, really loved is going to be Nobody's Darling, and this is a motorcycle Omegaverse romance. This one follows Lily, whose heat is rapidly approaching. She is the stepdaughter of the MC president. He wants to send her off to a different pack. He kind of doesn't want her in this life anymore, but she is very against that. Lily has always been off limits to the members of the MC since her stepfather made sure of that, but new members are patching in and some of them might be willing to break the rules with her. One of them being her stepbrother. Tensions are running high in the club, being that there are lies and rifts everywhere going on, and other rival clubs are trying to encroach on their territory. This one was a really good one and does include a beta love interest as well, so please check this out if you're interested. Definitely look up trigger warnings though, because most motorcycle romances do have darker themes, and I don't want you to be surprised if there are some darker themes in this one too. Another really good series is the Pack Bonds series by Rosemary A. Johns. Those books include Rebel and Her Knights, Ember and Her Marshals, Angel and Her Champions, Jewel and Her Kings, Puck and Her Blades, and Mercy and Her Devils. In this world, Omegas are seriously oppressed. In this first book, Rebel and Her Knights, Rebel is actually the first Omega resistance leader. She is trying to make a better life for herself, but she has to run under the radar while she's doing it. Rebel is hiding from her dad because she's been marked as a reject. Being marked as a reject in this world is very bad because you can be sent to the Omega Institute and essentially reconditioned to follow all the rules, and they put you through all these grueling things and you do not want to go there at all. In this society, is the alphas rule and they need to be the ones that are followed, no questions asked. But obviously Omegas, they want to have their own say in things and how their body is treated and what is done to them. So Rebel, being this resistance leader, is trying to fight for a bigger cause. This series as a whole pretty much follows that underlying theme where the Omegas are trying to make a better life for themselves, and they have to find alphas who are willing to work with them with that. So definitely pick this up if you're looking for a stronger Omega who wants to make a better life. So next up, I have an MM recommendation for you, and it's going to be Whisky and Sin by Emily Rath. Emily Rath is most well known for her Pucking Around series. I absolutely love this series, but at the same time, I was like, I want to try something else from her. So I found this Omegaverse and I absolutely loved it. So this follows Silas, who is an unbonded Omega. He is on the run from a pack that is hunting him down right now. He actually bumps into a pretty dangerous alpha, but is in desperate need of help at the time. So he actually is not sure whether he can trust this alpha with his secret or not, but he does end up accepting help. In accepting this help, he finds himself holed up in a mountain cabin all alone with this alpha, very worried that this alpha is going to find out his secret. Being cornered and desperate, he must quickly decide if he's going to be able to trust this alpha with his secret or not. Check the trigger warnings for this one as well. I mean, you should probably check the trigger warnings for anything you're ever going to read, but this one does have some darker themes. So one other thing that I really enjoy is when an Omega actually finds another Omega that they really like. It's not that common in these types of books, but I do enjoy seeing that. So this next one that I'm going to suggest is actually an Omega that finds another Omega that they really like. And this is Switch Heater by K.L. Moore. So in this, we follow Ripley. She's been at the Omega Center for over 3 years now, and pretty much everybody else has found their pack except her. On the last night at the center for her, she actually catches a scent off of somebody and doesn't know who it belongs to because it doesn't belong to either of the people that she originally sees there. Eventually, she ends up finding out that it belongs to their Omega and actually ends up starting to court the pack. This one I found really interesting as well because there is female-female action in this story. There's actually a ton of everything. I know there's MM, MF, FF, MMF, MFM, MMFM, MFF, MMM. So, wow. Tons of orifices being filled in this one. So if you're looking for some good smut, pick this one up. So if you're unaware of what all the terms mean, if the two M's are before the F, that means the M's do things together. But if the M's are after the F, that means they don't have any interaction together. So quite a bit of this is male-male as well as male-female with males that do not get on together. So tons of different things in this one. Pick this one up if you're interested. And then K.L. Moore actually has another romance called Be Mine that is a novella where there are 2 Omegas as well. The one Omega is about to go into heat and she finds another Omega that she really likes the scent of, but in this world, 2 Omegas together are not common, so she has to fight for what she wants. It's a nice short book. Definitely give it a go. So the last series that I'm going to suggest is going to be the Shadowbred series by Grace McGinty. This includes Mannix, Frenzy, Feral, and Crave. And this is a supernatural Omegaverse series. So the Mannix are a race of supernaturals that are actually said to be extinct in this world. They are not extinct though, because they end up abducting Naja from a strip club in Only Her Thong, and she finds herself in a kitchen with all of these Mannix. And they are telling her that she is the last Omega and that they need to breed with her. They are the least of her problems though, because Naja is being haunted by something worse than the boogeyman and needs to deal with that as well. So this is a poly romance with some male goodness, and it does include Mpreg as well. Check this one out if that's something that you're interested in, and I do think the series gets better as it goes. I really enjoyed meeting all of the other couples as well, so give this one a go. So I hope this answered all of your burning Omegaverse questions and kind of gave you a better idea of what an Omegaverse actually is. This is one of my favorite genres. I love reading Omegaverses, and I have a ton more on my list to read this year, so I will definitely be bringing you some more recommendations at the end of the year. I even have some holiday novella ones to throw in there that I'm really excited to tell you about. And I just love this so much, and I want to bring my love of this to other people so that they can enjoy it as well. But that's it for today. If you have already read all of the ones that I suggested, let me know down below and I can throw a couple more suggestions in before I film the next video. And I will see you next time. Bye!